The night Jimin whispered Jungkook's name. When he thought no one was listening, flushed face revolving, heart's fire, the first sound was not a scream but a trembling whisper, Jimin's voice, cracked with something raw and frightened, breathing Jungkook's name like a confession torn from a dream. Jungkook, don't go. Jungkook froze at the threshold of the dark rehearsal room, his heart hammering with an urgency he couldn't explain. He had only returned because he left his water bottle behind, but the moment he stepped back in, the world shifted. The lights were off except for one dim emergency bulb flickering above the mirrors, casting a ghostly glow that trembled along the studio's polished floor. And there, curled on the couch as though shielding himself from something unseen, was Jimin, breathing fast, jaw clenched, hands twisted in the fabric of his sweatshirt. Jungkook didn't move at first. He only listened. The way Jimin whispered his name wasn't casual. It wasn't playful. It wasn't even the soft tone Jimin used when he was tired and affectionate. It was desperate. Broken. Like someone reaching for a lifeline they feared had already slipped away. He stepped forward quietly, each footstep echoing a little too loudly in the silence. Jimin didn't wake. The tension in his shoulders only grew tighter, as though some unseen nightmare pulled at him. When Jungkook reached him, he noticed the sweat clinging to Jimin's temples, the slight tremor in his fingers, the way his breath stuttered in uneven spirals. This wasn't a normal dream. This was something deeper. Something trapped. Hyung? Jungkook whispered, his voice low, warm, careful. Are you having that dream again? Jimin flinched as though struck, eyes snapping open with a sharp inhale. For a moment the room held only confusion, wild, disoriented, shimmering with fear. Then his gaze landed on Jungkook, and everything in his face softened, collapsed, reorganized itself into something embarrassed, vulnerable, and desperately guarded. You weren't supposed to hear that, Jimin whispered, his voice still shaky. Jungkook crouched beside him, searching his eyes. Then tell me why you said my name. Jimin pushed a hand through his hair, trying to steady his breathing. He looked away, staring toward the dark corner of the room where the shadows gathered and deepened. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Jungkook pressed, not harshly, but with a sincerity that made avoiding the question impossible. You were scared. I've heard you talk in your sleep before, but not like that. Jimin's throat bobbed. Sweat glistened at the curve of his jaw. I don't want you to worry about things that aren't your burden. But Jungkook shook his head. Hyung, you're not a burden. The silence grew heavier, denser, wrapping around them like a storm waiting to break. Jimin had always been composed, disciplined, gentle, thoughtful. The kind of person who smiled through pain, carried more than he should, and hid his fear behind elegance. But tonight, that mask had cracked. Jungkook had seen the truth slipping through the fractures, trembling in the whisper that escaped Jimin's lips. Finally, Jimin exhaled a small, fragile breath. The nightmares, they've been happening for months. Jungkook felt something cold tighten in his chest. Why didn't you tell me? Because they're always about losing someone, Jimin murmured. Someone I care about too much. Someone who keeps walking away no matter how loud I call their name. Jungkook's heart pounded. And that someone is. Jimin hesitated. His fingers tightened around the edge of the couch cushion. You. The word fell like a spark in a room filled with gasoline. The air shifted. Something warm and dangerous and unspoken began to pulse between them. Jimin's confession was not romantic in its presentation, it was broken, raw, carved from fear rather than desire. And that only made it more powerful. Jungkook reached for Jimin's hand without thinking. Their fingers brushed. Jimin didn't pull away. You're not going to lose me, Jungkook said, voice low, steady, even though fear flickered in his own chest. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Jimin closed his eyes and let the touch anchor him. You say that now, but everything changes eventually. So let it change, Jungkook shot back, surprising both of them. Let it change into something we stop running from. Jimin's eyes opened slowly. They were dark, searching, as though he was studying Jungkook for answers hidden beneath his skin. You don't know what you're saying. Then explain it to me, Jungkook whispered. Jimin took a shuddering breath. He looked fragile in the half-light, like porcelain stretched too thin. I'm scared of wanting something I'm not supposed to want. Jungkook's pulse stuttered. Who told you you're not supposed to want it? Jimin didn't answer, but the silence was loud enough outside. Rain began tapping softly against the studio windows, blurring the world into silver streaks. The rhythmic sound mingled with their breathing, grounding the tension rather than easing it. Jungkook settled beside him, letting their shoulders brush. The contact was small but electric. Jimin stiffened, then slowly relaxed, as though warmth was finally reaching the parts of him the nightmares had frozen. He spoke again, voice barely audible. When I whisper your name, it's not just fear. It's regret. It's all the things I never say out loud. Jungkook swallowed, the weight of those words pressing into him. Then, say one of them. Just one. Start there. Jimin shook his head. No. If I say it, it becomes real. Maybe it's already real, Jungkook said. The room seemed to exhale. Jungkook looked at him, not as a teammate, not as the friend he'd grown up with, not as the person he admired from a distance, but as someone standing at the edge of a truth that could ruin or save them. And for the first time, Jimin didn't look away. Then maybe, Jimin whispered, I'm afraid of how real it already is. The admission lingered in the air, tender and heavy, reshaping the space around them. Jungkook's breath trembled once before he steadied it. He lifted Jimin's hand again, holding it more firmly this time, grounding both of them. You don't have to be afraid when I'm here, he said quietly. Jimin's eyes softened in a way Jungkook had never seen, touched by relief and terror and something dangerously close to longing. His voice lowered, gentler, honest. Then stay. Just for tonight. Jungkook didn't hesitate. Okay. They sat together in the dim light, the storm humming outside, the room wrapped in a fragile, intimate calm. And though neither said it aloud, something between them shifted, something they could no longer pretend didn't exist. As the night deepened, Jimin's breathing steadied, and Jungkook watched him with a quiet protectiveness he no longer tried to hide. Whatever the nightmare had been, whatever fear had carved itself into Jimin's heart, Jungkook made a silent promise to stand between him and the darkness. And for the first time in a long while, Jimin slept without whispering a name that he didn't need to. The person he feared losing was finally right beside him. The storm had passed by morning, but its echo lingered in Jimin's bones. He woke slowly, awareness rising like a tide, the warm weight of a blanket draped over his shoulders and the faint scent of shampoo, familiar, comforting, hovering in the air. His eyes fluttered open, landing immediately on the figure sitting against the wall beside the couch. Jungkook. He was half asleep, head tilted back, hair falling over his eyes, one arm resting loosely on his bent knee. He looked peaceful. Guard down. Vulnerable in a way Jimin rarely saw, and instantly, Jimin's stomach tightened. He remembered the whisper. The panic. The confession pulled from somewhere he'd sworn he would bury forever. He remembered Jungkook's hand closing around his like a vow. Jimin sat up abruptly. Jungkook's eyes opened instantly, instinctively sharp. Hyung. His voice was husky, freshly woken. Are you okay? Did you have another nightmare? Jimin shook his head too quickly. No. I'm fine. You didn't have to stay. But Jungkook leaned forward, expression softening. You asked me to. Jimin looked away. I didn't mean it. You did. Jungkook's tone was gentle but unmovable. You just didn't want to. The air felt warmer suddenly, charged with something electric. Jimin rubbed his hands together awkwardly, trying to ground himself. His chest tightened again when Jungkook's gaze softened further, as if he could see every thought Jimin tried to hide. Jungkook shifted, voice lowering. Hyung, what you said last night. Forget it, Jimin cut in, harsher than he meant. I was half asleep. I didn't know what I was saying. A flicker of hurt crossed Jungkook's face before he masked it with an exhale. Don't lie. Not to me. Jimin's breath hitched. Jungkook wasn't angry. That almost made it worse. If he had been upset, if he had pushed away, Jimin could have retreated into guilt and distance. But Jungkook looked at him with something fiercely tender, something that made Jimin's chest burn. Why are you doing this? Jimin whispered, almost pleading. Why are you being so calm about this? Because I'm not afraid of what you meant, Jungkook said. I'm afraid of what you're running from. Jimin paused, jaw tight. You think I'm running from you? I think you're running from how you feel, Jungkook replied. And you've been running for a long time. The words hit too close. Too true. Too dangerous. Before Jimin could respond, the studio door burst open. Taehyung walked in, hair messy, hoodie hanging off one shoulder, eyes widening the second he saw them, Jimin sitting on the couch, Jungkook kneeling close in front of him, faces entirely too serious, air thick with something unmistakably charged. "Oh," Taehyung said, blinking. "So, this is a thing now?" Jimin practically jumped to his feet. We're not, it's nothing like that, Hyung," Jungkook said quietly, not standing. Taehyung raised his hands with a lazy grin. "Relax. I just came to grab my phone. You two can continue your morning drama." But as he crossed the room, Taehyung's grin faded. He paused near Jimin and studied him carefully. "You didn't sleep at home," Taehyung muttered, eyes narrowing slightly. "You look like you cried." Jimin tensed. Jungkook rose slowly to his feet, stepping closer as if instinctively shielding him. "It was just a rough night," Jungkook said. Taehyung looked between them again, expression thoughtfully troubled. "Right. Rough night." He picked up his phone and started toward the door, but stopped with his hand on the handle. "Just so you both know," he said slowly, "secrets don't last long in this group. Especially the kind that make the air feel like it's about to crack open." Jimin stiffened. Jungkook answered before he could, voice steady. "There's no secret." Taehyung raised an eyebrow, gaze lingering on Jimin a beat longer. "Then why are you both acting like there is?" He left without waiting for an answer. Silence swallowed the room again. Jimin sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. "This is bad." Jungkook sat beside him. "No, Hyung. This is honest." Jimin shook his head. "No, Jungkook. Tae noticed. Others will too. And I can't let people think there's something going on." Jungkook's tone deepened slightly. "Why not?" Jimin's breath faltered. "Because they'll ask questions I don't know how to answer." Jungkook leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "Or questions you don't want to answer." Jimin turned his face away, but Jungkook gently reached out, fingers brushing his wrist. Jimin froze at the contact, small, soft, but heavy with meaning. "Hyung," Jungkook murmured, "you're not the only one who feels something." Jimin's eyes flew open. Jungkook swallowed, gaze unwavering, voice trembling just enough to betray how hard he was trying to keep it controlled. "I'm not confused. I'm not scared. I'm not running. I know exactly what I feel when I'm around you." Jimin's throat tightened painfully. "Don't say that." "Why?" Jungkook asked, leaning in even closer. "Because you don't want it to be true? Or because you want it too much?" Jimin's breath left him in a shudder. The studio felt suddenly too small, too warm, too full of things they had never dared to speak aloud. The closeness between them throbbed with tension, emotional, desperate, uncontained. And Jimin, shaking slightly, whispered, "You don't understand what you're risking." "And you don't understand what I'm willing to risk," Jungkook replied. Before Jimin could respond, the door cracked open again, this time just a sliver. Someone had been listening, and whoever it was slipped away before either of them could see. Jimin's heart dropped. Jungkook's jaw set. The quiet between them shifted into something darker, heavier, more dangerous. And even without a cliffhanger, the air made one thing painfully clear: nothing would be the same after this. Rain had dried from the pavement outside, but inside the hall the air still felt damp with something heavier than humidity, something like tension holding its breath. Jimin stood frozen long after the footsteps faded down the hallway. Whoever had been at the door had moved with too much caution for it to be accidental, too quickly for it to be innocent, too quietly for it to be anyone without intention. Jungkook was the first to move. His hand slipped instinctively to Jimin's wrist, anchoring him, grounding him. "Hyung," he said, voice low, controlled, but sharp with protective instinct. Jimin had never heard pointed at him like this. "Look at me." Jimin turned slowly. Jungkook's eyes were dark, focused. The soft warmth from moments ago burned into a quieter flame now, one that meant danger, suspicion, and the promise of a fight if one came to them. "Someone heard us," Jimin whispered, dread crawling up his spine like ice. Jungkook squeezed his wrist gently. "Then we deal with it." Jimin shook his head, stumbling back a step. "You don't understand. This isn't something we can just deal with. If someone misinterprets what they heard, if they tell the others, they heard my voice too," Jungkook said. "So let them misinterpret. I'm not ashamed of being close to you." Jimin's pulse jumped. He swallowed hard. But I am. The moment the words left his lips, he regretted them. Jungkook's face softened, then tightened, like a wound opening and healing at the same time. Jungkook didn't look angry. That would have been easier. No, he looked hurt, quietly, deeply hurt, in the way he got when something mattered so much he couldn't even raise his voice about it. His reply was soft but heavy. Hyung, am I something you're ashamed of? Jimin's breath trembled. No. Of course not. But being seen with me is? Jungkook's voice lowered, raw around the edges. Or is it being seen feeling something for me? Jimin felt cornered. Not by Jungkook, but by himself. By the truth he had buried under years of discipline and fear, by the softness he had refused to let bloom, by the possibility that he wanted something he had no right to want. He stepped back again, but Jungkook followed, not aggressively, just not letting him run. Jungkook, Jimin whispered. It's not simple. It is, Jungkook said. You feel something. I feel something. Everything after that is just fear. Jimin's jaw tightened. Fear keeps people safe. Fear keeps people lonely, Jungkook countered. The silence that followed dragged like a slow blade. Jimin felt his chest ache, felt the truth he couldn't deny burning its way up his throat, but before he could speak, the hallway outside echoed with voices. Point 2. Maybe 3. Moving closer, Jungkook reacted first. He grabbed Jimin's hand, not gently this time, and pulled him into the storage room beside the studio, closing the door behind them with a quiet click. Jimin stumbled against him in the darkness, chest pressed briefly against Jungkook's. The air between them snapped tight, laced with adrenaline and something dangerously intimate. Jimin's breath brushed Jungkook's collarbone. Jungkook's hand stayed on his waist longer than necessary before he realized and let go. Outside, someone spoke. A voice Jimin recognized. Hoseok, are you sure you heard something? Hoseok asked. Another voice answered, less certain, but undeniably familiar. Seokjin, I'm telling you, someone was in there talking, Seokjin murmured. And it didn't sound like an argument. More like something heavy. Jimin felt his blood freeze. Jungkook's hand brushed his arm in reassurance he didn't dare give aloud. Jimin shuddered at the touch, not from fear this time, but from the warmth that grounded him even here, pressed into shadows with consequences inches away. Hoseok continued, thoughtful. Well, they left in a hurry. Whoever it was. Then the second voice again, someone Jimin had not realized could sound so curious. Namjoon. There were two voices. I'm sure of it. Heartbeats hammered in the dark. Jungkook moved closer, too close, leaning down just enough for his lips to brush the shell of Jimin's ear. His whisper was warm, steady, fiercely protective. They won't find us. Just breathe. Jimin did. Barely. It wasn't the risk of being caught that made his pulse race, it was Jungkook's hand sliding gently along his forearm, slow, soothing, intimate in a way no one else had ever touched him. Outside, footsteps began to fade, but Namjoon paused at the door. He tapped it lightly. Silence stretched. Jimin closed his eyes, breath shaking. Jungkook's hand found his again, grip strong, grounded, a silent promise. Then Namjoon spoke through the door, mild, calm, but edged with curiosity sharp enough to cut. If someone's in there, he said, just tell me you're okay. Jimin felt every muscle in his body tense. Jungkook leaned in closer, his breath warm at Jimin's cheek. Don't move, he whispered. Seconds passed. Finally, Namjoon stepped back. All right. Probably nothing. Footsteps faded, the hallway quieted. Jungkook released a long, slow exhale. They're gone. But Jimin wasn't relieved. He stepped back, pressing his palm to his forehead. This is bad. This is so bad, Jungkook. Jungkook reached for him, but Jimin moved away this time. Hyung, no. Jimin's voice cracked. People are already noticing. They're listening behind doors. They're curious. If this keeps going, if people keep seeing us like this, like what? Jungkook challenged softly. Close. Suspicious. Jungkook's gaze held steady. If they're suspicious, it's because something is changing. Jimin shook his head. I can't let that happen. Can't, Jungkook repeated, voice tightening, or won't. Jimin didn't answer. Jungkook stepped closer again, slower this time, gentler, as though approaching something fragile. You're pushing me away because someone overheard us, he said. Not because you don't feel something. I know the difference. Jimin swallowed hard. Jungkook's eyes softened, deepened, caught on Jimin's like gravity. Hyung, Just tell me the truth. Are you pulling back because you're scared of being seen with me, or because being close to me makes you feel something you don't know how to handle? Jimin's breath stuttered, his voice shook both. Jungkook closed his eyes briefly, letting the pain settle before he spoke again. Then let me help you handle it. Jimin's chest twisted. You can't fix this. I'm not trying to fix it, Jungkook said. I'm trying to stay. The room went still again. Jimin opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Too many emotions fought at once. Fear. Want. Longing. Guilt. Confusion. Desperation. The feeling of standing at the edge of something enormous and irreversible. Jungkook saw all of it in his face, and instead of pushing, instead of demanding an answer Jimin couldn't give, Jungkook stepped back, not far, but enough to give Jimin space to breathe. Hyung, he said softly, I'm not going anywhere. But I need you to stop pretending you don't care. Jimin clenched his jaw. His voice came out small, honest, trembling. I never said I don't care. Their eyes met in the dark. The truth sat between them, raw, terrifying, undeniable. Jungkook's exhale was shaky, but his voice steadied as he spoke. Then let me stay close. Even if you're scared. Jimin didn't move. He didn't agree. He didn't pull away either. Instead he whispered, quieter than a confession, louder than a lie, I don't know how. Jungkook's reply was immediate, tender, and devastatingly sure. Then I'll show you. The doorknob rattled. Jimin jumped. Jungkook stiffened. A voice called from the hallway, calm, tired, completely unaware of the storm inside. Jimin? Jungkook. Are you two in there? Yoongi, and the night that had started with a whispered name was unraveling into something none of them could control. The moment Yoongi's voice seeped under the door, quiet and unhurried, Jimin felt every nerve in his body reorder itself into panic. Jungkook's hand tightened once around his wrist, just once, a silent warning, before he let go, stepping back into the shadows as if preparing to shield Jimin from whatever came next. The doorknob twisted again. Jimin? Yoongi called, a faint lilt in his voice, like he already suspected more than he was letting on. I know you're in there. Someone saw you come this way. Jimin sucked in a sharp breath, staring at the door as though it was about to burst open and end everything. His voice trembled despite his best efforts to steady it. We can't hide. He'll know something's wrong. Jungkook shook his head. Hyung. Breathe. But breathing felt impossible when Yoongi pushed the door half open, letting a sliver of light carve the darkness into sharper edges. His silhouette hovered there, small, calm, observant in the way only Yoongi could be, eyes adjusting instantly. And then he saw them. Jungkook, shoulders tense, jaw set, standing just a fraction too close. Jimin, breath unsteady, face warm, heart pounding too loudly in the small room. Yoongi blinked once, twice. His eyes lowered briefly to their hands, close enough to touch, still magnetized from moments before, and then lifted to their faces again. And something in him sharpened. Well, Yoongi murmured. Voice quiet but unmistakably knowing. This is not nothing. Jimin felt the floor drop. Jungkook didn't flinch. It's not what it looks like. Yoongi's eyebrow arched higher than humanly possible. Kid, I've known you for 10 years. When you lie, your voice goes half a tone lower. Jungkook froze. Yoongi's eyes slid to Jimin. He stared for a long, slow moment, too perceptive, too gentle, too precise. You look shaken, Yoongi said. And not from fear of me. Jimin's pulse jumped. His hands trembled just slightly. Yoongi stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a soft click, sealing them all in the dark. Then he leaned against the wall, arms crossing casually, expression unreadable. So, he said, which one of you wants to explain why you're hiding in a storage room like fugitives? Silence. Jimin's throat tightened. Jungkook looked ready to speak, but Jimin lifted a hand, small, shaky, but enough to stop him. He couldn't let Jungkook carry this. Not after everything he'd said. Not after what he'd whispered in the dark. Jimin stepped forward. Yoongi, he said softly, please don't ask questions right now. Yoongi tilted his head. So it is something. It's complicated. Jimin's voice frayed at the edges. And I'm not ready to talk about it. Yoongi observed him for another tense breath, eyes skimming Jimin's face, reading the exhaustion, the fear, the fragile truth trembling underneath. Then he turned to Jungkook and asked, almost too casually, did you do something stupid? Jungkook bristled. No. I didn't, but Yoongi cut him off with a simple look, the kind only an older brother could give, sharp enough to peel away pretenses. Are you sure? Jungkook's voice dropped. I'm sure. Another pause. Yoongi exhaled slowly, rubbing the bridge of his nose. All right. I'm not going to pry. But whatever is going on between you two, Yoongi, Jimin whispered, a plea hanging from his name. Yoongi looked at him again, this time his expression softened. He stepped closer, placing a careful hand on Jimin's shoulder. Jimin, I'm not here to judge you. Or him. Or anything you're scared about. I'm here because someone said they heard voices last night and again this morning. Some people are getting curious. Jimin's stomach twisted painfully. Jungkook stiffened beside him. Who's talking? Namjoon, mostly, Yoongi admitted. He asked if you two had a fight. Or if something happened. He said your voices sounded intense. Jungkook glanced at Jimin, a silent exchange of panic and guilt. Yoongi continued, voice dropping. You know how fast things spread among us. Even the things we never say out loud. Jimin swallowed hard. We didn't mean for anyone to overhear. I know, Yoongi said. But that doesn't stop people from wondering. Jungkook stepped forward, a new edge in his voice. Are you going to tell them you found us here? Yoongi's eyes flicked between them. Do you want me to? No, Jimin said instantly. That was the first honest, unfiltered thing he had managed to say since last night. Yoongi nodded slowly. Then I won't. Jimin let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, but Yoongi wasn't finished. He stepped back, studying them both with a quiet sadness, the kind that came from understanding too much. Listen carefully. I'm not asking what's happening. I'm not asking if something is changing between you. That's yours. Not mine. Jungkook's voice was low. Then what are you asking? Yoongi's gaze softened as he looked at Jimin, really looked at him. I'm asking if you're okay. The words hit harder than anything else that night. Jimin's response came out small, fragile, the truth pressed into its simplest shape. I don't know. Yoongi nodded. Then make sure whatever this is doesn't break you. He turned to Jungkook. Or him. Jungkook's jaw tightened. It won't. Yoongi met his eyes for a long moment, the weight of an unspoken warning settling between them. See that it doesn't. He reached for the door again, turning the handle gently, but before he left, he paused with his back still turned. He said quietly, for what it's worth, you two don't need to hide from me. Jungkook inhaled sharply. Jimin's eyes widened. Yoongi added, even softer, just don't let the others figure it out before you do. Then he stepped out into the hallway and left the door slightly open behind him, as if offering freedom neither of them knew how to take. Silence fell like dust. Jimin leaned against the wall, sinking to the floor, hands trembling. Jungkook crouched instantly beside him, brushing hair away from his forehead with gentle fingertips. Hyung, Jungkook whispered, look at me. Jimin did, and in Jungkook's eyes he saw worry, warmth, fear, protectiveness, and something deeper that scared him more than being caught ever could. Nothing's ruined, Jungkook said. Not yet. Jimin's voice cracked. It feels like it is. Jungkook shook his head. It feels like it's beginning. Jimin closed his eyes, overwhelmed. Jungkook's next words were a quiet vow. I won't let you face this alone. Jimin's fingers curled around Jungkook's without him even realizing. The door stood open. Yoongi was gone, the hallway was quiet, but nothing in Jimin's world felt stable anymore. Not because of fear, but because of how much he wanted to stay in the moment he knew he should run from. The rain had stopped by morning, but the city still looked bruised, sky pale and heavy, streets slick with yesterday's grief. Jungkook hadn't gone home. He sat outside the studio all night, soaked to the bone, staring at the building as if the truth itself was locked inside its walls. Taehyung had fallen asleep in the car, drained from shouting, but Jungkook didn't close his eyes once. He kept replaying Jimin's final words in his mind like a curse. You'll find the truth in the final note. When dawn came, Jungkook stood, water dripping from his sleeves, and whispered to himself, if that's what you want, I'll finish it. He unlocked the door again. The air inside was colder now, almost metallic. The silence pressed against his ears like weight. The mirrors, the shards, the dust, everything was the same, except for one thing. His lyric sheet, which he'd left on the floor, was gone. Looking for this? The voice came from behind him. Yoongi was leaning against the doorframe, a cigarette between his fingers, eyes dark and tired. Jungkook's throat tightened. What are you doing here? Taehyung called me. Yoongi's tone was even, but there was something trembling under it. He said you're losing your mind. That you're seeing things. Jungkook stared at him. You all think this is about ghosts, don't you? But you're wrong. This is about what you never told me. Yoongi exhaled smoke and stepped inside. You think we hid something from you? No you did. Jungkook's voice cracked with anger. Taehyung said Jimin jumped. But he didn't, did he? Yoongi froze for half a second, just enough to confirm it. Jungkook's tone sharpened. What really happened, Hyung? Yoongi crushed the cigarette in his hand, his expression tightening. You're not ready. Jungkook took a step forward, eyes blazing. Then make me ready. Yoongi sighed, staring at the floor. You want the truth? Fine. But you won't like what you hear. Say it. Yoongi met his eyes. It wasn't suicide. But it wasn't an accident either. It was a fight. The words hit like glass shattering in his chest. A fight. You and him. Yoongi's tone was heavy. That night after rehearsal, after everyone left, you two argued. About the song. About control. About what the group had become. He wanted to quit. You told him he was selfish. Jungkook's breath faltered. Fragments of memory started to surface, Jimin's voice, sharp and trembling, his own words thrown back like knives. I don't remember, you blocked it out, Yoongi said quietly. When he left that night, you followed him outside. The balcony. The rain. You kept yelling. He turned to say something, but he slipped. Jungkook's hands shook violently. No, Yoongi's eyes softened. You tried to grab him. You almost did. But you didn't. Jungkook backed away, his vision blurring. You're lying. We found you on the floor, Jungkook, Yoongi said, voice breaking for the first time. You were covered in his blood. You kept saying his name over and over, like if you said it enough, he'd come back. Jungkook collapsed to his knees. Stop. You were in shock. You wouldn't speak for days. Namjoon took care of the reports, the press, everything. We agreed to say it was an accident because you couldn't live with what really happened. The room began to spin. The mirrors flickered again, faintly glowing with ghostly movement. Jungkook pressed his hands against the floor, gasping. I didn't mean to. I know, Yoongi said softly. We all know. Jungkook lifted his head, tears burning down his cheeks. Then why didn't you tell me? Because you forgot, Yoongi whispered. You chose to forget. The doctors said it was trauma. That forcing the memory back could break you. But he didn't leave me, Jungkook said, his voice cracking. He's still here. I saw him. Yoongi's gaze darkened. You're seeing what your guilt wants you to see. But that doesn't mean he's not listening. Jungkook shook his head violently, standing again. He told me to finish the song. He wants me to find the last verse. Yoongi looked at him for a long time. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, the missing lyric sheet. You already wrote it. You just never sang it. Jungkook took the paper with trembling hands. At the bottom, in handwriting that wasn't his, were new lines if the world forgets me, let the melody remember if I fall, let your voice carry what mine couldn't say. His tears blurred the ink. He whispered, he wrote this? Yoongi nodded. He recorded something too. It was supposed to be his verse for the song you two were working on. We never released it. None of us could. Where is it? Yoongi hesitated. Are you sure you want to hear it? I need to. Yoongi sighed, then handed him a small USB drive. It's all there. Everything he left behind. Jungkook looked at it like it was sacred, his reflection trembling in the metal surface. Thank you, Hyung. Yoongi lingered at the door. When you listen to it, don't blame yourself again. You've done that long enough. Then he left, closing the door behind him. The studio was silent again. Jungkook plugged the USB into his laptop, his heart pounding so loud it felt like thunder. A single file appeared, Asterisk final note. Wov. Asterisk he pressed play. At first, there was just the sound of rain, faint, distant. Then Jimin's voice came through. Not singing. Just speaking. I know you'll hate me for this. But maybe one day, you'll understand. The song isn't about leaving. It's about staying even when I can't. You said music never dies, right? Then let me live there. There was a pause. Jungkook's breathing hitched as the piano began, soft, slow, familiar. Then Jimin sang. Every note carried weight, grief, love. His voice was fragile but beautiful, each lyric like a confession wrapped in melody. Jungkook felt his chest tearing open as he whispered along, remembering the harmonies they used to share. When the song ended, Jimin spoke one last time. If you're hearing this, it means you came back. Don't stay too long in the dark, Jungkook. Sing it once, for both of us, and then let it go. The recording clicked off. Jungkook sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, the tears unstoppable. Then he stood. He took the old mic from the corner, brushed the dust off, and powered up the system. The lights flickered, the air heavy with something unspoken. He hit record, and for the first time in 10 years, Jungkook sang the song in full. His voice cracked, bled, healed, soared. Every word Jimin had written poured through him like fire and forgiveness. The sound filled the studio, echoing against every wall that once held their laughter, every floorboard that once caught their steps. When he reached the final verse, Jimin's verse, he closed his eyes and whispered, "This is for you." The final note lingered, long and trembling, before fading into silence. When he opened his eyes, he saw it, faint, almost imperceptible, Jimin's reflection smiling back from the mirror, warm and at peace. Jungkook smiled through his tears. "You kept your promise." Then the reflection faded with the dawn light outside. The city was waking up. The rain had stopped for good. Jungkook packed the USB and lyric sheet carefully into his bag, walked out of the studio, and didn't look back. As the door swung shut behind him, the faint echo of two voices, his and Jimin's, rose softly from within, harmonizing one last time. The song was finished. And so were they.